Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. This is the story of a woman who spent years under a controlling narcissist's rules, and how the very control he insisted on became the reason her exit went perfectly and left him with an unforgettable surprise. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. He marked what I could take when I left. I took it all on his workday. My ex and I were planning on separating. It was a toxic relationship. He was a controlling narcissist, and I'd been under his thumb for far too long. I was in counseling, and my therapist and I mapped out the best way for me to get out, although the details of the plan were my idea. I got a better paying job. I opened my own bank account. That was a huge fight, and I figured out where to go. He knew I was leaving, and he even went through the house and marked all the things that were his that I couldn't take with me, which was basically everything we purchased throughout our 13 years together. I was only allowed to take the items that I came with when we moved in together. He planned to take the day off from work on a particular Saturday and would be there to supervise my move to ensure that I only took what he approved. That's where my plan began. This is the critical flaw in a controller's logic. He believed his authority was so absolute that you would follow his script, even for your own escape. His need to supervise was the precise information you needed to blindside him. The Saturday before his planned date, I scheduled to move after he left for work. He worked long days, so I knew I could pack and leave before he returned. About an hour after he left, my friends and family showed up with boxes and tape and a moving truck. I parked it out back so my neighbors didn't see it. In less than 4 hours, all of my belongings were packed and on the truck, and I pretty much stuck to his rules because I didn't want reminders of our life and my future. Before I left in the truck, I went through and grabbed every single towel, washcloth, sheet, toilet paper, paper towel, napkin, and tissue. I took anything and everything that he could wipe his butt or his nose with, and I took the carpet runner that was at the front door, leaving the tape that secured it to the floor. That way he knew as soon as he walked in that I was gone. Imagine coming home from work after a long day, expecting one thing and finding another, and then not having a single tissue or toilet paper to use. The genius isn't in taking things of value, but in taking things of immediate mundane necessity. It's a final silent lesson in consequence. You don't control the narrative anymore, and now you don't even have a towel. My best revenge was building a happy new life. But that day made me feel so good. And our next story. Karen stole small things at first, then took the car. This happened about 4 years ago, but the fallout from it dragged on for much longer. It didn't happen to me directly, but to a close friend of mine, and I watched most of it unfold in real time. At the time, he and his girlfriend, now wife, were doing what a lot of people in their mid-20s do when they think they're finally getting their lives together. They were working constantly, long hours, overtime, whenever it was offered, weekends gone. They'd just taken out a mortgage on a modest but nice house in a decent neighborhood. Nothing flashy, but new enough that it felt like a real step forward. Around the same time, he bought himself a brand new sports car, a Chevrolet Camaro. Not some used beater, brand new, something he'd wanted for years and finally felt justified buying now that he had made it. He proposed not long after. Between the house, the car, the engagement, and the pressure of keeping everything afloat financially, they were exhausted all the time. The romantic we'll figure it out together phase very quickly turned into survival mode. Wake up, work, come home late, eat something quick, sleep, repeat. Housework was the first thing to fall apart. At first they tried to keep up with it, promised each other they'd clean on Sundays. That lasted about a month. After that, the house slowly started to look like what happens when two people are never home at the same time and both assume the other will take care of it later. So they did what a lot of people do when they have money but no time. They hired help. That's where Karen enters the story. She didn't introduce herself as Karen, obviously, but she might as well have. Middle-aged, overly familiar from the start, the kind of person who talks a little too much about how nobody wants to work anymore while applying for a job. She advertised herself as an independent cleaner. No company, no uniform, just her supplies, and glowing self-written reviews online. My friend interviewed her at the house. She was polite, friendly, almost aggressively normal. Talked about how she had helped so many young couples get their lives back. Made a point of saying she didn't snoop, didn't touch anything personal, and absolutely respected boundaries. She emphasized trust over and over. That should have been the first warning sign. The performance of trustworthiness is often the most valuable currency for someone who plans to break it. Her script wasn't for their benefit, it was to short-circuit their natural caution. They agreed on a schedule. Once, sometimes twice a week, since both of them were usually at work during the day, she'd be cleaning while the house was empty. She asked for a set of keys so she wouldn't have to coordinate constantly. They hesitated briefly, then gave her the keys anyway. Rules were simple and clear. Don't let anyone else inside. Lock up when you leave. If something breaks, tell them. If something is off limits, leave it alone. Karen nodded along to all of it, took mental notes, reassured them repeatedly that she understood how important trust was. For the first few weeks, everything was perfect. The house was spotless, like impressively clean, floors done properly, dusting done in places most people ignore, bathroom gleaming, kitchen looked staged for a real estate listing. She even left little notes sometimes saying things like wiped inside the fridge or cleaned behind the couch. My friend and his girlfriend were thrilled. They recommended her to a couple of coworkers. They talked about how worth the money it was, how relieved they felt coming home to a clean place after brutal work days. 6 months went by like this. That's when things started to feel off. Not in a dramatic way, nothing obvious, just small things, easy to miss things. It started with batteries, AA batteries, the kind you buy in bulk and never think about. One day, my friend went to grab a couple for a remote and realized the drawer was empty. He shrugged it off, assumed they'd just run out sooner than expected. Then a phone charger disappeared. Again, nothing huge. Chargers get lost all the time, end up in bags, cars, offices. He assumed he'd left it at work. Then a bottle of perfume his girlfriend loved went missing. One of the expensive ones she only used on special occasions. She was annoyed, but not alarmed. Thought maybe she'd packed it for a trip and forgotten. Then another small electronic item, then another. Individually, none of these things screamed theft. Together, they formed a pattern that was hard to ignore, but also hard to prove. They went over the house together one evening, doing that thing couples do when they're trying to convince themselves they're not paranoid, opening drawers, checking closets, looking in weird places. Nothing. What made it worse was the timing. Almost everything went missing on days when Karen had been there alone. Never when my friend worked from home, never when his girlfriend took a day off. Still, suspicion without proof is just suspicion. Accusing someone who has your house keys of stealing from you is a big step. One that can blow up in your face if you're wrong, so they kept quiet, watched, paid closer attention. Around this time, my friend stumbled across Karen's social media by accident. One of those people you may know suggestions. He clicked out of curiosity. That's when the second red flag hit. Her posts were messy. Public arguments, vague posts about people owing her money, complaints about ex-husbands, court settlements, child support, lawyers. A lot of bitterness, a lot of desperation just under the surface. Buried in the comments were references to debt, thousands, maybe more. Still, none of that was proof, so my friend did the smart thing. He installed security cameras. Nothing flashy, no obvious domes on the ceiling, just small, discrete cameras covering key areas. The living room, the hallway, the entryway, and the office where important documents were kept. He didn't tell Karen, and he waited. For the first week after the cameras went up, nothing happened. That alone almost made my friend doubt himself. Karen came, cleaned like usual, locked up, left. No missing items, no strange behavior, just her usual routine, almost too perfect. If anything, she seemed extra careful, extra polite in her follow-up messages. Little smiley faces. House looks great today, that kind of thing. By the end of week 2, my friend was starting to feel ridiculous. He even joked to his girlfriend that maybe installing cameras was overkill, that maybe they were just stressed and imagining things. When you're working nonstop and burning the candle at both ends, your brain starts looking for enemies where there aren't any. Then, late one night, he checked the footage. Not because something was missing, just because he felt like it. That's when he saw the first real slip. Karen finished vacuuming the living room, then wandered casually into the office. She wasn't dusting, she wasn't cleaning. She stood there for a moment, looking around, then opened a drawer she had never opened before. She didn't take anything that time, she just looked, closed it, walked away. It was subtle. If you weren't already suspicious, you'd probably miss it. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Over the next 2 weeks, the pattern became obvious. Karen would clean, then she'd linger. She'd open drawers, cabinets, closets. She'd check bags. She'd look through places that had nothing to do with cleaning. She'd pocket small items when she thought she wasn't being watched. Chargers, USB sticks, small electronics, expensive toiletries. Anything she could slip into a pocket or bag without changing her silhouette. The worst part wasn't even the theft. It was how comfortable she was. She moved through their home like it belonged to her, like she'd been doing this for years. No rush, no nerves, no glancing at doors or windows. Just calm, practiced stealing. By week 5, my friend had hours of footage. He sat down and cataloged it all, dates, times, items, estimated values. He cross-referenced what he saw on camera with what was missing in real life. By conservative estimates, Karen had already stolen well over the legal threshold where it stopped being petty and became a serious crime. That alone would have been enough to go to the police. But then she crossed a line she didn't realize existed. One evening, my friend went to grab a flash drive from his desk, a specific one, the kind you don't misplace. It wasn't there. That drive contained private documents, work contracts, financial records, scans of IDs, things that could cause real damage if they ended up in the wrong hands. He checked the footage. Karen took it. No hesitation, no second thought. Picked it up, examined it briefly, and slipped it into her bag like she'd just found spare change. That was the moment this stopped being about stolen property. Now it was personal. This is the critical escalation. Petty theft is a violation of things. Stealing personal documents is a violation of self. It shifts the stakes from inconvenience to potential ruin and rationalizes any countermeasure. His girlfriend wanted to call the police immediately. She was scared, angry, felt violated in a way that's hard to explain unless someone has had unrestricted access to your home betray that trust. But my friend didn't want to rush it, not yet, because at this point, Karen didn't know she'd been caught. And people like Karen, once they think they're safe, tend to escalate. So he decided to let her. He told her they'd be going on a week-long honeymoon, didn't say where, just that they'd be gone, unreachable, and that she could come clean whenever she normally did. He made a show of it, talked casually about taxis to the airport so he wouldn't pay ridiculous parking fees, mentioned the Camaro would be staying home, and then he made sure the car keys were left in plain sight. They didn't actually leave town. Instead, they rented a small Airbnb a few blocks away, close enough to watch, close enough to react. Before leaving, my friend slipped a GPS tracker into the car. Not obvious, not something someone would casually notice, just enough so he could see where it went in real time. Then they waited. The first day, nothing happened. The second day, still nothing. Karen cleaned, locked up, left. My friend started wondering if she'd finally gotten cautious. Then on the third day, his phone buzzed. The Camaro was moving. At first, it rolled slowly, neighborhood speeds. Then it hit the main road, then the highway, 90 miles per hour. That's when my friend called the police. He didn't rant, didn't speculate. He calmly explained that his vehicle had been taken without permission and that he had live GPS tracking showing its current location. Police intercepted the car about 20 miles away. Karen was behind the wheel. The trap wasn't just sprung, it was built on her own psychology. By creating an irresistible opportunity, the keys, the absence, he turned her comfort into her downfall. She wasn't caught stealing, she was caught being herself when she thought no one was watching. Karen's story changed 3 times before she even made it to the station. First, she said she'd been given permission. Then she said she misunderstood. Then she said she was doing a favor and planned to return the car. By the time it went to court, her story was fully detached from reality. She claimed my friend had asked her to drive the car to an unspecified location and that she couldn't remember where because she was under stress. She accused him of setting her up, claimed he was trying to extort money from her to pay off his mortgage. She cried, she yelled, she contradicted herself. Then my friend's lawyer played the footage, hours of it. Clip after clip of Karen stealing, pocketing items, opening drawers, taking documents, walking out with bags heavier than when she arrived. The courtroom went quiet. Karen lost it. She started shouting over the judge, accusing everyone of lying, claiming the footage was edited. Security had to intervene more than once. The value of the stolen property, not including the car, was already far beyond the criminal threshold. When the car theft was factored in, the charges escalated significantly. Police searched her home days later. They found most of the stolen items. They also found property belonging to other clients. Karen wasn't just a bad maid, she was a serial thief. Her existing debts, combined with new charges, fines, restitution, and civil penalties, meant her financial situation completely collapsed. Prison time was on the table. Even if she avoided the maximum sentence, her life as she knew it was over. My friend got his property back, got justice, and Karen, she finally found consequences. Once the court proceedings ended, my friend thought the worst of it was over. He was wrong. The legal part was the clean part. Paperwork, evidence, dates, rulings. That was the easy section. What followed was the slow, grinding aftermath that doesn't show up on police reports or court summaries, but lingers for months, sometimes years. The first thing that hit was the emotional crash. Up until the arrest, my friend had been running on adrenaline. There was a plan, a purpose, a sense of control. Once Karen was no longer walking freely in and out of their home, that energy evaporated almost overnight. What replaced it was a deep, gnawing sense of violation. Their house no longer felt like their house. Every drawer felt suspicious. Every closet felt exposed. His girlfriend started double-checking locks compulsively. She would get up at night convinced she heard something, even though they lived in a quiet area and had never had break-in issues before. She admitted later that the hardest part wasn't the stolen items, it was the realization that a stranger had been alone in their private space for months, watching them through the residue of their lives. Seeing family photos, handling personal belongings, reading mail, learning routines. That knowledge changes how you see walls. They replaced locks, added an alarm system, moved furniture, reorganized entire rooms, not because it was necessary, but because they needed to feel like the house belonged to them again. Justice doesn't heal the violation, it just ends the threat. The real work begins after the courtroom empties, in the quiet daily act of reclaiming a space that feels spiritually contaminated. The second wave came from people they didn't expect. Karen's family reached out, not to apologize, to blame. They accused my friend of ruining her life, claimed he could have handled it privately, suggested that involving police was excessive. One relative even implied that he was lucky nothing bad happened to him. The implication was clear. How dare he hold her accountable? My friend blocked every number. He had to learn his lesson about giving people like that access to anything, information included. Then came the professional consequences. Karen's other clients started calling the police after her arrest made local news. Some had assumed they'd simply misplaced items over the years. Others had noticed things missing but never connected the dots. Once they heard about the Camaro incident and the footage, everything snapped into place. Statements were given, reports were filed, the investigation expanded. What initially looked like a single case ballooned into a pattern of theft stretching back years. Karen hadn't just been stealing casually, she'd been methodical. She targeted dual-income households, people who worked long hours, homes where routines were predictable and absences were frequent. She avoided stealing large items at first, favoring things that could plausibly be lost. When nothing happened, she escalated. By the time she reached my friend, she was comfortable enough to steal a car. That confidence ended her. The financial side was brutal. Between restitution, fines, court fees, and existing debts, Karen was buried. Accounts were frozen, assets seized. Whatever savings she had evaporated almost immediately, even if she avoided the maximum sentence. Her ability to recover financially was essentially non-existent. And that's before the civil suits. Several former clients filed claims against her. Insurance companies got involved. The damage rippled outward in ways Karen probably never considered while slipping charges into her bag. My friend testified in one of the follow-up hearings, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He said later that watching Karen sit silently while someone else described her actions was strangely cathartic. No shouting, no dramatics, just facts laid out in a sterile room. For the first time, she wasn't controlling the narrative. At home, life slowly stabilized. They stopped talking about the case every day, then every week, then only when paperwork arrived or an update was required. The Camaro was detailed professionally, not because it needed it, but because my friend wanted to erase the feeling of someone else's hands on the steering wheel. Eventually, they married. Quiet ceremony, close friends, no mention of Karen, no reference to the chaos she'd caused. They didn't want her to shadow anywhere near that moment. Every once in a while, someone brings her up, usually as gossip, usually as a cautionary tale. My friend doesn't enjoy those conversations, not because he feels guilty, but because he understands something now that he didn't before. People like Karen don't see themselves as villains. They see themselves as owed. Owed money, owed comfort, owed forgiveness. Owed second chances they never give to others. And the moment you stop accommodating that belief, they collapse under the weight of their own choices. The final quiet lesson. The entitlement wasn't just to their possessions, but to their silence and compliance. Her entire system relied on the rational, rule-following decency of her victims. When met with equal calculation, the house of cards fell. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.